everyone, welcome back. As you can see, I've made some changes now since we stopped. I've finished transferring all of my small fish onto this mural, and I've retaped this. This is very important because of course I'm going to be painting off the edge here. Now I just want to give you a heads up about the direction we're going in. I've got all these small fish on and I'm going to paint them just with one coat. At this point, I don't want them to be very bright because they're going to be in the background. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let them dry completely, and then I'm going to be putting another coat of blue over them. And the reason I'm doing that, as you can probably guess, is I want them to seem like they're far away. If you were underwater and looking, you could see some fish far away. So at this point, I'm not worried about any of the big fish. I'm just focusing on these little fish. I want to go through some of the materials with you that I have now on the table. So if you look down here, you can see that I've set up my paints. Now in terms of palette, you could spend a fortune on different palette materials. I'm just using an old camping plate. Works very, very well. And I've put just a little bit of color out. I've done this for the video. Normally I would just start with maybe my white and my yellow just and paint whatever I wanted white and yellow. I probably wouldn't put all these out. If you do have a lot of paints out and you're worried that they're going to dry, because that's what acrylic paints do, keep a little tiny spray bottle nearby. I've mentioned this in another video, and just every so often go like that. That will help keep them nice and wet for a little while. Paper towel, water, brushes. I'm not going to need a big brush right now, but what I do have is a small square, a small round, a bigger round, and absolutely I need a little detail brush. So especially for these small fish, I'm going to have to kind of get into little parts, so I need these. With your paints, I talk about this in another video. I have two different kinds of paints here. I have cheaper tube paints and I have a more expensive brand of paint. So every brand pretty much has a student or a beginner type. For this, the beginner type is absolutely fine. So, you know, like these Amsterdam ones are just great. These are Michael's or Artist Loft, more beginner, cheaper ones, they're fine too. The more expensive ones, Winsor and Newton, I just laid them out so you can see them. In another video I do talk about using craft paint, and craft paint can be fine on murals when you're painting just flat color, especially on a lighter background color, as long as you're using some gesso or primer underneath your subject. But really truly, for this kind of a painting, I would not use craft paint. You're going to have way too many streaks, inconsistencies. So for this kind of thing, I would use some kind of tube. Cheaper tubes are fine, but I wouldn't go with craft. I wanted to give you an example of what you could do on canvas. Our whole idea with our mural kits is to provide compositions for mini murals. So this is an example, our bigger picture today, of a mini mural. I'm not painting the entire wall. Lord knows how long that could take me, but it's very manageable to do this. I could do something similar on a canvas. Everything that I've done with this wet on wet background could be on the canvas. But here you can see I've done something really quite different. I put the canvas on the floor with a bunch of paper underneath, and I did like a Jackson Pollock just splatter everywhere, which was so fun. I only chose two kinds of fish. I wanted them nice and bright, and I actually really liked having the splatter come through the back of the bottom of the fish. These were all painted with tubes as well. I wanted a better quality paint. One other thing to note with these is that if I wanted them to be flat color, I would put at least 2 coats of gesso on them to cover up that splatter. These also were a little bit blended, like I painted it all yellow, and then while it was wet I added red. Up here, when I start today, I'm not going to worry so much about that. Now you can see I've put my reference sheet over here. It's just to guide me. I've got all of my colors ready. I think I'm going to start with these guys, and if I look over here, it's white with yellow and then a little bit of black with these other stripes. Now mine are going this way and that one's going that way, so that's a little bit confusing, but I think I can figure it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start. And I will just paint one or two fish with you, and then I'm going to stop because you'll have the idea. And then when I come back, it'll be very fun because they will be dry and I will be able to then go ahead and put my next blue coat on. So, are you able to zoom in on this fish? So, right down here,
Hang on a sec. Okay.
right down in here, here's an example of where I have to switch to my little detail brush. Because I really do need to get in to those corners. Same down in here. So I work with two brushes at the same time. I'm down here. And I have to work fairly quickly because acrylic paints do dry quite quickly. These are a little bit streaky. I'm not going to worry about that because the blue that's showing in the background, I actually like that. I want them to look like they're far away. I don't really want them to be too solid. In the picture over here, there's some yellow. So at this point, while this white paint is still wet, I'm going to add a little bit of yellow. It's just blending. So you'll remember from the very first video when I was working wet on wet, this was the same idea. As opposed to doing something like those funky fish where I showed you they were just flat. Let one color dry, give it another coat. These I'm not doing that. Okay, so at this point I can go back to white. Not going to worry about washing out my brush. Don't need to do that. And I'm going to start here because when I look over at that picture I can see now I'm starting to make a mess, so that means I have to switch to my little detail brush because I'm going outside the lines. And usually I don't worry too much about going outside the lines, but it will look a little funny if the fish has all these extra little parts, so need to go up here. Okay, so at this point I think you can see how I'm cruising along with this guy. I'm going to fill all this in and then it'll be fun because I'm going to actually add the black and a little bit of red down here, very, very faint, and then I'll be going on to my next fish. So I think I'll stop there. It'll be fun when you come back because you'll see that I've got all my little fish painted and then we'll be ready to put on a layer of blue.